One night in January of last year, I received a phone call from my friend Aislinn asking if she could spend the night at my house due to an ongoing issue within her home. At this point in time, Aislinn and I were not as close, but I still said yes. Later on that night, I had asked what happened, and she began to open up. That night, we stayed up until 3 in the morning sharing our similar experiences. Before this experience, I never could have imagined someone else relating to my trauma. I truly felt understood, and it was beautiful. I want people's stories to be heard and understood. I want the stories of others to illuminate onto those who do not speak of their story. This love of storytelling stems from my own life story that has positively affected those around me. Recently, these past couple of years, I have fallen in love with writing poetry. It became an outlet for me whenever I needed to escape the outside world, for that is the main reason why I chose storytelling for my capstone. I believe that God uses broken stories in order to bring humanity closer together through storytelling, for that is what humans live for, human connection. Through sharing one's vulnerable feelings, experiences, and stories, the intimacy of being known is displayed, for God designed us to walk through life with one another. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up." This verse is a cross-reference to the creation of Eve from Adam. Genesis 2:18 remarks, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." There has been multiple times this past year where my friends and I have gotten together to play the emotional card game called We're Not Really Strangers that requires lots of vulnerability. The more we became vulnerable about our lives with one another, the more we understood one another. Within the last year, I have really begun to understand my purpose as a Christ follower, and that is to help other people like Jesus would. Throughout the Bible, Jesus is seen as compassionate over and over again. An example of Jesus' compassionate character is in John 11:33-35, when Jesus sees Lazarus' sisters weeping, so he joined and wept alongside with them. Importantly, Jesus' empathetic character led others to feel heard and understood, and that's ultimately what I want to achieve through my capstone. I will be sharing with you the first lesson I learned through capstone, the part of storytelling that requires you to get out of your comfort zone. For my capstone project, I went to downtown Denver to interview random strangers. I yearned to experience strangers' stories. My hope was that I could actually create the space for these strangers to express their stories. The strangers got to randomly choose a face-down card that could have been frightening to answer. Questions were displayed on the card, like, what do you crave more of? Is there a feeling that you miss? Or what part of your life works and what part of your life hurts? Some cards even had statements like, admit something. On my way to downtown Denver, I was filled with nerves. Aislinn and I began walking around downtown Denver trying to build up the courage to go up and talk to somebody. Overall, it took us about 10 minutes to finally go up and talk to somebody. Aislinn was just as nervous as me, which made me feel not so alone in how I felt. I remember Aislinn would point out a random stranger for me to go up to, and I'd half walk up to them, and then immediately turn back around because I was just so nervous. Overall, it took us about 10 minutes to gain the courage, and once we finally did, I remember asking the question, "Excuse me, miss, would you mind answering a question for a school project?" I remember standing there with hope in my big wide eyes just for the answer of no. I remember thinking, wow, all this build-up just for nothing. I remember saying aloud to Aislinn that it was the worst it could get and that we should just keep moving forward. Looking back on it now, I am actually extremely grateful I got rejected on the first try, for it helped me get over my fear of rejection. Constantly, I found myself being scared and attached to the outcome I had built up within my head. Over time, I finally built up the courage and I was no longer scared of rejection. I learned that it is okay to get out of my comfort zone. This frightening experience motivated me to want to share my own story outside of a school project, especially when I am uncomfortable. It taught me that I should do the uncomfortable things in life, for it causes growth in oneself. When hearing strangers' stories, it made me feel less alone in how I felt, which motivated me to want to share my own story. This motive inspired me to speak of my story in a school chapel. I felt a little needle attached to a string, pierce and pull onto my heart, that it was necessary to display the dark and broken part of my life that occurred junior year of high school. There I stood, on the PAC stage, naked in truth, feeling like I had my stomach cut open, with my words falling out of my gut. I spoke of my heartfelt story in front of an audience that consisted of my teachers, my best friends, my peers, and even my middle school discipleship group. After chapel was over, many faculty, lower-classmen, and peers approached me with words of appreciation and encouragement. Ultimately, I could feel my soul change that day. An illumination of passion for storytelling heightened within my interests. The encouragement made me want to share my story even more. Capstone not only confirmed the value of sharing my story, even when it feels scary, but another major lesson I learned was how to effectively communicate my story through reading a book called Your Story Matters by Leslie Fields. Through 9 chapters, she breaks down the essentials of how to write and share your story, that anyone of any age can do so. There are 3 main chapters that I believe to be essential when it comes to sharing your story. The first chapter is called Your Stories Together, in shorter words, gatherings. Fields claims that we have so much common human ground. Let's come together to form the best kind of gathering I know. A gathering of differences. A community of strangers who become soon a trusted circle of friends. It is evident that within my own life, I have actually seen this play out right before my eyes, and you can too. For example, Aislinn and I's friendship skyrocketed once we became vulnerable with one another. Once I shared the hardest and darkest part of my life, I felt as if I was not alone anymore. Rather, that someone was not on the sidelines watching me struggle, but there lurking on the dark path with me, side by side. Therefore, Fields affirms that, when we pass on our stories to one another, we form a very real triangular community. We're drawn into the presence and hearts of one another, and together, we're drawn closer to God. As the audience, you too can gain the experience of knowing one another, to know each other's stories. Secondly, your inner story matters. Fields recognizes that reflection is important when it comes to sharing your story. She portrays that the importance of reflection about writing away from what we think we know toward new understanding. We write not from who we were then, but from who we are now. It's significant to understand that you're not the same person all those years ago when your mom passed away, or when the depression hit you so bad it felt like it was hard to live, or even when that tragic event haunted you at night. Fields establishes that stories set in the past are not complete without the story of the present. No matter what the story is or where it takes place, you can't end up in the same place you started. It's powerful to hear these words, isn't it? That you have grown as a human being compared to where you have started. It's pleasing to hear that God gives us the opportunity for change through the hard things that we have been through. It's beautiful to take a step back from our chaotic lives and to see the good that was hidden in the dark that has now been revealed to us. Lastly, in one of the chapters called Your Healing Story, she recognizes that for many of us, our story may consist of someone who has wrongfully hurt us. She challenges the readers by asking the question, are we courageous and daring enough now to write beyond ourselves toward the wounded others in our stories? She illuminates that we can still choose and be brought to life by and healed by all these years later. She admits that it is scary to write about other people, no matter how warm our relationships. Placing anyone on the page, even ourselves, always requires some kind of distortion. We can only present pieces, moments, a part of who they are, and even then, it's from our perspective only. She pushes the audience to go beyond their feelings of hurt and resentment, and to shift perspectives and discover truths about the antagonist within your story. I encourage that you all attempt to see the antagonist, not in black or white, but rather a shade of gray. In order for your healing to occur, we must discover it's never too late to embrace the ugliness of the past, to love even the people who ignored and harmed us, and to find the God who carried us through it. The last major lesson I learned about storytelling was that it is important to prioritize empathy and being present while trying to understand someone's story. While I was in Denver, I remember glancing at all of the strangers that were around me. Every human being that was around me, going about their day-to-day lives, has a story to tell, and I only got to listen to a small portion of it. That goes to say that every stranger that surrounds us has probably been through the hard things that some of us may be going through right now. Out of all the people I interviewed, I would have never imagined the answers that they revealed to me. For example, I interviewed a lady that looked to be in her 20s. She looked like a happy businesswoman who had all of her life put together. Later on in the interview, she revealed to me that she was in her 30s, married, and had 2 children. This woman drew the card that said, "Admit something." It took her a couple seconds to think about what to say. You could tell that she was debating in her mind whether or not to reveal a secret that she had on her chest. Anxiously, in carefulness, she exclaimed, "This is going to sound awful, but I'm not in love with my husband." I then proceeded to ask her if her husband knew and if they were going to get a divorce. Her only response was eventually, but she said it with a soft smile upon her face. She looked relieved to get it off of her chest. I share this particular story because I myself characterize this woman to have all of her life put together. I learned that I can no longer assume that everybody is okay all the time. I learned that it is important to check up on my loved ones or even the people I have small acquaintances with. In addition, I chose to interview my cousin because I knew he had a story worth listening to. He vocalized to me the broken hardships life has brought to him at such a young age, and how the people in his life, my family, helped turn over his life for the good. For example, he said, "Looking back, it's like if I didn't have these key people, my mom to show me what to do and what not to do, my biological father who completely showed me not what to do, Lynette and Rob, Kevin and Margie, and my grandma. They were the best. Those 5 people poured so much into me. We're going to make sure this kid is going to make it." That is what it felt like. And I'm forever grateful. I am a product of those 5 people. When I specifically listened to this part of his story, I was astonished. It made me grow to appreciate the people I have within my life. In addition, my cousin said, "I don't know what I would consider myself as. Probably Christian, but I do know that I am chosen. I feel that. I didn't even ask for it. That's lucky. You have to choose to be happy. Humans are quick to mope and sit in a bad situation. We just take so many things for granted. There's so much to be thankful for." This all struck me while I was listening, hearing his story, hearing his hurts, hearing how grateful he is for the people in his life, and hearing how he turned out to be successful. It moved me. I felt a genuine connection, and I appreciated how he painted his childhood, his teen years, and his adult life now. Prior to this interview, I've never created the time and space to actually listen to his story, and I regret waiting for so long. Over these past few weeks, I've been going back to listen to my prior interviews. I have learned that there's a difference between hearing versus listening. The definition of hearing is the faculty of perceiving sounds, while the definition of listening is to take notice of and act on what someone says, respond to advice or a request. Listening is profound when it comes to trying to understand someone's story. Listening requires presence, empathy, and nonverbals, while hearing is simply just surface level, meaning there may be no empathy involved or nonverbals. So while I read or play out strangers vocalizing an aspect of their life, really try to listen to their narratives. I feel so alone. My mom doesn't even acknowledge me anymore. I feel like I have nobody who genuinely cares. I haven't been happy in a while, and I kinda just want to be held. I hate myself for this, but I miss my ex. It feels like our souls are one, like he is the exact same person as me, and I wish he never left. I have never felt genuinely appreciated or loved by my friends. Very few of my friendships actually feel like we have a real, close connection. I struggle keeping friends, and I just feel so detached from them all the time. I'm constantly putting an effort and time into these relationships while they don't do the same. It's draining. I feel like I'll never find someone who will love me well, and I feel like I don't deserve that either. I feel like I'm too messed up for good and healthy love. I'm living the American dream. I got a beautiful wife, beautiful babies, properties, and I'm not even chasing the money. I've already hit the lottery twice. Beautiful son, beautiful daughter. What else do you live for? I have it right now. I knew only one story, her daughter running from her abusive, emotionalist father. Okay, next slide. I have a video.
Most pain you've ever been in that wasn't physical. Not physical pain, probably a heartbreak. I broke up with him. He's kind of a narcissist, but definitely like that emotional pain over physical pain.
What is a dream you've let go of? I guess like the ideal of what like I thought my life would play out as, like what age I thought like be dating or married or like all that.
So, what has been your earliest recollection of happiness?
I don't know, going on my first ski vacation.
Yeah, in Europe somewhere.
What would your younger self not believe about your life today?
Maybe that I feel successful, I feel content with my life, and I feel like my younger self probably would have believed, you gotta keep working and you won't be happy and content until later on in your life. So, yeah, I guess maybe just that I feel good about where I am today.
What title would you give this chapter in your life? I would say healing. I think this is the most I've healed, I don't know, since ever. I never have felt so at peace with myself and where I am now, and just accepting who I am and loved who I am. So that's what I would call it. Yeah, I had a lot of anxiety growing up that I wasn't really aware of. I also had childhood trauma, and so I think once I started going to therapy, that helped me a lot. And then I also moved to Denver by myself, and I think just being by myself, it just really helped to just actually finally learn who I am and work on myself.
What title would you give this chapter in your life? And I said midlife, because I'm a mom of 2 and I'm 40, and it just feels like the midpoint of my life. It's a good thing. Everything's kind of cruising along. Everybody's happy, doing their own thing. I'm married.
What is your first love's name and the reason you fell in love with him or her? My first love's name is Larry, and I fell in love with him because he was just cool. I've known him for 10 years. I still know him to this day. So yeah.
You still talk to him today?
Yeah, I do. We just say hi and bye, but we both got kids now. But we're still friends. That was I'm 27 now, so I was 13.
Wild card, admit something. It's gonna sound awful, but I'm not in love with my husband. As bad as that sounds.
These stories submitted by strangers are compelling to listen to. Many of you have related or encountered the narratives of the hurt, the happiness, the love, or even the pain that was vocalized. It's captivating to know you aren't the only one left out hung to dry, that someone else has felt this pain too. Next slide. This is you. This is the stranger next to you. You may have the same shared hopes, feelings, and experiences. Next slide. This is you, and then this is the stranger next to you. You aren't the only one who feels this way. Remember that you aren't alone in the dark, cold valley, haunted by your past feelings or events. Stories create human connection with one another. Get to know that person. Talk to that stranger. It's scary to be vulnerable, and for many of us, it is even uncomfortable to make small talk with a stranger. Get out of your comfort zone, because it is worth it in the end. It is actually proven that human connection forms through stories. Did you know that your brain waves actually start to synchronize with those of the storyteller? Rob Holman says, when we share personal stories, there's an exchange of life. Although each story is distinct, there's a shared bond that knits us together for the common good. This is what makes us human. When we begin to perceive our humanity together, we share a deeper and greater connectedness. When we embrace this connectedness, life becomes more about people than things. We look after the interests of others in non-manipulative ways. This is authentic connection, the place where you become an integral part of a much broader story than your own. Trust is fortified through healthy lines of communication. I want to illuminate that stories can be in any shape or form, that it doesn't always have to be a sob story. It can be how you figured out you love playing basketball, or what cultivated you to start reading. It can even consist of your happiest memories, that your story is worth telling, that your tears are not forgotten, and that the good season of your life is not lost, for those stories matter too. Listen to the stories of those around you, and go share your story. Someone may need to hear it. Thank you.